After moving to Florida in 2011, I promised my parents that I would always return to Indiana to celebrate Christmas. It just made sense that my husband, two daughters, and I would travel to Indiana, since nearly all of our extended family lives there. Christmas 2020 seemed to be just like any other one of our Indiana Christmases, even as the COVID-19 pandemic loomed over all of our heads. As we settled into our 5-night stay in my parents' home, I couldn't help but continuously observe the behaviors of my loved ones. As expected, my mother had joyfully decorated her house in a way that even Martha Stewart would be proud. Gifts were neatly wrapped in beautiful paper, adorned with gorgeous handmade bows, and strategically placed under each of the 2 Christmas trees. Our favorite foods were thoughtfully prepared, and every room captured the holiday spirit. The time and attention to detail my mom puts forth to entertain is simply remarkable. My dad, of course, would once again share his passive-aggressive remarks on how many storage containers he had to pull from the mini barn to make the magic happen. None of that ever seems to bother my mother, as she's going to decorate her way, with or without anyone else's approval. Of course, my dad is always willing to help, but he could never meet my mother's high standards, so why offer? As a creature of habit, my dad eagerly awaits the moment when the movie The Christmas Story plays on cable TV for 24 hours straight. It has become an obviously annoying event for my mother, yet my dad completely ignores her disapproving attitude and plays the movie continuously. And I'm pretty sure he does it out of both sheer will and stubbornness. This year, however, brought an unexpected change in his routine when I haphazardly introduced my dad to the movie It's a Wonderful Life. I couldn't believe it when he said he had never seen it, but then again, I shouldn't have been surprised. After all, he had been devoted to watching the Christmas Story's 24-hour marathon for decades. This was the first year he broke his long-standing tradition and watched It's a Wonderful Life all throughout Christmas Day. Around noon on the 25th, my sister, brother-in-law, and 2 nephews joined us to celebrate the day. For the first time, I heard my sister talk about how she wakes up in the middle of the night, her mind racing, feeling stressed, and thinking of all the scenarios that could play out in the near future. I never imagined that the pressures of life would cause her to worry so much. I guess we aren't complete opposites after all. As brothers often do, my 2 nephews constantly grate on each other's nerves. 20-year-old CJ confidently believes he is always right and is quite bold and competitive. As a strong choleric, CJ feels superior and tries to run right over his little brother, who is reserved and even-keeled. Although Alex is 3 years younger and roughly 6 inches shorter, he could easily rise above CJ and beat him at his own game. Acquiring the knowledge that exists in the world of temperaments would enable Alex to tame the lion that roars deep within CJ. Last but not least, I need to mention my aunt, even though she was unable to attend our family get-together. My aunt's most endearing quality is her compassion towards furry creatures, whether it be her own pets or a wild animal. Nothing that sets foot on her property goes hungry, but then she agonizes over the animal's overall health, making herself second-guess whether or not they need medical attention. Needless to say, my aunt is an emotional thinker, and reasoning with her can be an insurmountable task. She is so headstrong that it can be extremely frustrating when trying to help her resolve issues. In addition, it is impossible to count on her as she struggles with follow-through. Which brings us back to Christmas 2020. My aunt lived up to her non-committal self and would never tell my mother whether or not she and my uncle would join us on Christmas Day. She eventually used the coronavirus as an excuse not to come, since she believed she had been exposed to COVID-19 on December 18th. None of us could argue, so she knew she was off the hook. As I continue to take notes on how each of my family members are wired, I can better manage my own traits in order to have healthy relationships with the people I cherish. This allows me the ability to alter the way I communicate, avoiding certain topics that could turn toxic, and knowing when and with whom to share my stories, ideas, and opinions. I've even discovered why one of my close family members refuses to talk with me about temperaments, which I will explain in my next podcast. So this completes part 1. Please listen to part 2 for the insightful conclusion of identifying your audience.